It was supposed to be just another mundane stop after a long, exhausting shift at the mechanic shop. Elijah Bennett, a 40-year-old mechanic from Baton Rouge, didn't expect anything out of the ordinary when he walked into the local grocery store. The evening air was humid, the sun had just set, and all Elijah wanted was to grab a few things for dinner before heading home. But as he stepped into the store, something unusual caught his ear. Voices rising, tension thick in the air. Two men, standing near the front, were loudly mocking a young mother with her two children. Linda, her name was, though Elijah didn't know it then. Her children, a girl of about 8 and a boy maybe 5, stood silently beside her, faces flushed with embarrassment and fear. The men were relentless. The insults they threw at Linda were cruel and unprovoked. Elijah could feel the anger building inside him. He was a quiet guy, one who usually kept to himself, never getting involved in other people's business. But this wasn't normal. This wasn't the kind of thing you ignore. His eyes darted around the store. No one was doing anything. The cashier avoided eye contact. A few people glanced around awkwardly, but no one stepped forward. Elijah, a mechanic used to working under the hood of cars, now found himself facing a different kind of engine. The tension in the air, the growing discomfort, the unspoken need for someone to take action. His hand tightened around the handle of his shopping basket, his pulse quickening. Without thinking, Elijah walked toward the group. "You two got a problem?" His voice was calm but firm, slicing through the laughter and mockery. The two men turned, surprised by the sudden intervention. The younger of the two sneered, "Mind your business, old man." But Elijah stood his ground, eyes unwavering. "I think you're making it someone else's business." A few people shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking between the men and Elijah. Elijah could feel the weight of their silent support, a small but noticeable shift in the atmosphere. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't even trying to make a scene. He just couldn't let this slide. The men didn't back down immediately. The older one, with a crude grin, made a move to approach Elijah. He must have thought Elijah would cower. But Elijah didn't move. He didn't need to. The men hesitated, taken aback by the older mechanic's composure. They exchanged a quick look, probably sizing up Elijah's calm but no-nonsense stance. It only took a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, the younger man mumbled something under his breath, and the two backed off, slinking away toward the exit, muttering insults as they left. Linda, the young mother, looked up at Elijah with wide eyes. She didn't say anything, but her gaze was enough grateful, relieved. As the men disappeared out the door, the tension in the store seemed to dissipate. Elijah wasn't sure if it was his actions that did it, or just the simple fact that someone had finally spoken up. Either way, the store felt quieter, less suffocating. But just as he turned to walk away, he caught Linda's eye. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't need to say more. Elijah nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of the brief connection. He grabbed his items, paid, and walked out into the night, his mind still lingering on the strange moment. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who did the right thing. And yet, as he drove home, there was a strange weight in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite place. But that weight was nothing compared to what was coming next. The next morning, Elijah's phone rang as he was getting his tools ready for work. He glanced at the number, an unknown local number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello," he said, half waiting for some telemarketer or wrong number. "Elijah Bennett?" The voice on the other end was smooth, calm, but there was an edge of something, cold. "We need to talk." Elijah's stomach sank. There was no way it was a coincidence. "Who is this?" "I'm with the Baton Rouge Police Department," the voice continued. "Detective Morrow. You were involved in an incident last night at the grocery store." Elijah's mind raced. He thought back to the scene. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even much of a confrontation. Just some words, some tense moments, nothing physical. He didn't think it would escalate beyond that. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elijah lied, his voice steady. "Listen carefully." Detective Morrow's tone dropped, now colder than before. The two men you confronted were more than just locals with a bad attitude. One of them is under investigation for several serious crimes. We believe there was more to that incident than you realized." The detective went on, explaining that the younger man Elijah had spoken to was connected to an underground network in Baton Rouge, a group with ties to criminal activities, drug dealing, extortion, and worse. The older man, the one who had made the crude remarks, was a known enforcer for a local gang. Elijah froze. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't even known. All he did was step in when he saw someone being mistreated. But now Elijah realized the truth. His small act of defiance had triggered something bigger, something dangerous. "We believe they'll be coming after you," Detective Morrow said, his voice quiet but serious. "You might want to be careful." Before Elijah could respond, the line went dead. Later that day, Elijah went about his work at the mechanic shop, but his mind was elsewhere. His hands, usually steady when working on an engine, felt shaky now. Every little noise, every passing car, seemed to put him on edge. By the time he finished for the day, the thought of returning home felt wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. As he stepped outside the shop, the cool evening air felt heavier than usual. His truck was parked a few yards away, but just as he reached for the door handle, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad, wearing a dark hoodie. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, eyes hidden beneath the hood. Elijah tensed, a sense of dread crawling up his spine. He didn't need to wait for the man to speak to know who he was. He recognized the warning signs. "You're the guy who stood up for that woman last night," the man said, his voice low but menacing. Elijah didn't respond, but his heart started to race. The situation was spiraling faster than he could process. "I don't know what you think you're involved in," the man continued, "but trust me, you don't want to know." He stepped closer, his presence now imposing. Elijah's mind was racing. What was happening? Was this just a random confrontation? Or was this part of something bigger? Something that went far beyond a simple act of kindness? Before Elijah could react, the man took a step back, as if realizing something, and turned to walk away. But as he did, he dropped something on the ground, a small black envelope. Elijah stared at it, his mind whirling. He knew deep down this was only the beginning. What had started with a simple act of bravery in a grocery store had now spiraled into something much darker. As Elijah bent down to pick up the envelope, he noticed something written on the back, something that sent a chill straight to his bones. It read, "You're next." And just like that, the game had changed. Elijah had unknowingly crossed a line, and now he was being pulled into a web of danger, lies, and crime far bigger than he could have ever imagined. What would happen next? Would Elijah be able to protect himself and his family from the storm that was coming? The black envelope. It sat in Elijah Bennett's hand, like a weight, pulling him down. He couldn't shake the feeling that the moment he touched it, his life was about to change forever. He stared at the ominous words on the back, "You're next." For a moment, his body went cold. His breath quickened. It was as if the world around him suddenly became louder, the buzzing of the neon sign above the shop door, the rustling of the wind in the trees. But none of it mattered. All that mattered was this moment, this note. Elijah's eyes darted around the empty parking lot. No one in sight. He looked back down at the envelope, his heart racing. Why had the man dropped it? What did it mean? He had no answers, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't ignore it. This wasn't some prank. He felt it in his bones. Something was happening, something he couldn't control. He'd barely gotten involved last night, but now it felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. One wrong move and he might be pulled under. But then the thought hit him. Who were these people? The man in the hoodie, he had known about the incident in the store. That much was obvious. But what if Elijah was wrong about everything? What if this wasn't just about defending someone? What if it was about something much more sinister? He had no answers, but he needed them. With his pulse still racing, Elijah made a decision. He couldn't wait for the next shoe to drop. He had to find out who was behind this. He needed to understand why this was happening. He He slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket and climbed into his truck, determination settling in. He wasn't about to run scared. Not now. Elijah's mind was a storm as he drove through the streets of Baton Rouge, heading toward the address on the business card Detective Morrow had slipped him over the phone earlier. He wasn't sure what he expected, maybe some sense of clarity, some answers to why his life had suddenly become a nightmare. But what he found there was anything but comforting. The building was a rundown office complex, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, away from the bustle of downtown. It looked like any other forgotten part of town, graffiti on the walls, broken windows, the kind of place people avoided. Elijah parked outside and hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. Could he really trust the police? After all, how much could Detective Morrow know? He'd only just learned about the criminals Elijah had accidentally crossed paths with. But this was his chance. If he didn't take it, what was the alternative? Taking a deep breath, he walked through the door. Inside, it was just as dimly lit and cold as the outside. The front desk was empty, and the air had a stale, stagnant smell. Elijah approached the reception desk cautiously, where an elderly woman sat, her eyes scanning him as if she'd been waiting for him. "You must be Elijah Bennett," she said, her voice raspy but confident. Elijah nodded. "I'm here to see Detective Morrow." She gave a thin smile. "He's expecting you. Go ahead." Without another word, Elijah made his way down a narrow hallway. As he reached the end, the door to a small office opened, and there stood Detective Morrow, looking more worn than he had on the phone. "I see you came," Morrow said, motioning for Elijah to enter. "Glad you did." Elijah stepped into the office, and Morrow shut the door behind him, locking it. There was an air of urgency in the detective's movements, something Elijah couldn't ignore. "Listen, Elijah, I'm gonna get straight to the point. You're in over your head. What happened last night wasn't some random encounter with a couple of loudmouths. Those men, the ones you confronted, they're part of a much larger operation. An operation that's been running in Baton Rouge for years. They're tied to more than just street-level crime." Morrow paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Elijah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's really going on here?" Morrow sat down behind his desk, folding his arms. "The younger guy, the one you confronted, his name is Devin Taylor. He's part of a local crime syndicate. They're involved in everything from drug trafficking to human trafficking. They've got ties to powerful people, and I mean powerful people." Morrow's voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes darting around the room as if someone might be listening. "And the man you think was just an enforcer? His name is Marcus Drake. He's a well-known player in the underworld. He's not just some thug. He's the middleman, the guy who handles dirty deals for the people in charge." Elijah's head spun. "You're telling me these guys were involved in all that? And I just stepped in? I didn't even know who they were." Morrow nodded gravely. "That's the problem. You're a target now, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've caught their attention. And they don't forget." Elijah swallowed hard, trying to process the gravity of the situation. He hadn't asked for any of this. He had just tried to do the right thing. "So, what do I do now?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Morrow sighed and leaned forward. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Elijah. This isn't a local street fight. This is bigger than anything we've dealt with before. But I'm going to help you. I need you to stay close, lay low, and don't make any sudden moves. We're tracking their operations, but I can't protect you if you're out there acting on your own." Elijah's mind raced, the realization of how deep this ran starting to settle in. "But what about the note? The one I found last night? They're coming for me. They're coming for me, Detective." Morrow's face hardened. "That's exactly why I'm telling you to stay low. Whoever sent that note knows you're getting too close. But what they don't know is that we're watching. We've got eyes on Taylor and Drake now. They don't know it yet, but they're being hunted." Elijah felt a rush of relief but also a creeping fear. What had he gotten himself into? Just as Elijah thought he might catch his breath, Morrow leaned back in his chair, a dangerous glint in his eye. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's something else going on here. Something that will turn everything you think you know upside down." Elijah froze. What do you mean? Morrow lowered his voice, eyes darting around the room again. You see, Marcus Drake isn't just a middleman. He's working for someone much more powerful than we realized. Someone you would never expect. Morrow paused for a moment before speaking the name that would haunt Elijah forever. Linda, the young mother from the grocery store. Elijah's mind reeled. Linda, the woman he'd defended? She was connected to all of this? It gets worse, Morrow continued, his voice low. Linda is more than just a victim. She's the one who orchestrated everything. She's the one pulling the strings. Devin Taylor and Marcus Drake, they were never the real players. She was Linda. She's the one who set you up. Just as Elijah's world began to unravel, a cold realization hit him: he had been played. And the woman he'd helped was at the center of it all. What was Linda's real game? Was she still a victim? Or had Elijah been part of something far more sinister than he could ever have imagined?